Hey folks, Kevin here. Well, it's October 24th, 2018. I'm out behind my workshop making some modifications to the existing tomato cages that we have. Now, I'll post a link to a video that I created a year or two ago about doing it yourself, creating these tomato cages out of concrete reinforcing mesh. It comes in a big spool. You can get it at your big box stores like Home Depot or Lowe's around here. I got all this at a little bit lower price at the contractor concrete supplier facility where you'd call up and order so many yards of concrete being delivered in a cement truck. Once the concrete is mixed, the cement is mixed with the aggregate. So these cages, these tomato cages, which are basically the width of the roll comes 5 foot, and that's why the height of the cage is 5 foot. I made the cages so that they're 2 feet in diameter when you look at them across the top section of them. The holes in the material, in other words, they're multiple strands of wire going vertically and horizontally around the perimeter of the cage, and the holes that are within them are 6 inches square, which makes it real easy for your hand to slip through the cage. Once the tomato plants are in there, you can grab a hold of a large tomato in your hand and pull it back out rather easily. You can do pruning rather easily as well. And so they've worked out fantastic. Now this last season in the Central Garden, I'll post a link to that video in the upper right hand corner, I made a modification. We live in a very high wind zone, so one of the things I did do, I added one more piece of rebar, and I put the wire cages directly up against each other, but in between each cage and on each end I put a 1/2 inch rebar, and I get 20-foot sections of rebar. I cut them in half and then cut those halves in half, so they're 5 foot lengths of 1/2 inch rebar that enclose each cage on each side. So there's 2 pieces of rebar for each cage, and each cage each rebar supports 2 different cages, and together this network in a long straight line, even though my cages go pretty much north to south and we have really strong westerly winds, they no longer get knocked over. And these aren't restricted to just tomatoes. We've put pepper plants in these before, which have worked really well. We've done eggplants in it. You can use these for beans as well. There's a couple of modifications, and if there's interest in it, I'll create some videos showing how we do that as well, using these cages and flat wire as well to support beans and other plants as well. So these cages, the other thing, over the last couple of years, I've used these in the food forest to protect some of the berry bushes and some of the trees. However, the standard 2 foot diameter of the tomato cages isn't ideal for many plants. So I needed to make it so that I could easily remove the cages, more easily store the cages, and have different size cages for various different possibilities on the property. So I may have some trees that I want to develop the lower branches and the deer come through and browse them all off. So what I want to do is have a cage that I can come out, wrap around it, and over a couple of years growth go on out, remove it. Or if I want to do some sheet mulching with it, not have to be able to pick the cage up over the plant as well, or the tree. So they had to be more easily collapsible, more easily transportable, more easily storable, and a little bit more better as far as when we're harvesting or breaking down the tomato plants, breaking down the tomato cages at the end of the season. So the way I've done it before is when I've taken the spool of concrete reinforcing mesh, I'll just call it wire mesh, and I unroll it, I cut right down one of when they're standing, one of those vertical bars right up next to it. And then the additional bar that's left, because that's sticking out, the laterals going around the perimeter of it, I would fold that over, and that would bind the cage together. And so what I've done is I've gone ahead and removed that additional piece of wire that that would hold the cage together all the way down. I've snapped all those off, and that way when I'm reaching in, that extra piece of wire sometimes catches the vine of the tomato plant, or a fruit grows in between those two sections, or when I'm breaking the cages down at the end of the season, they'll get hung up on that internal barb that's there as well. So I wanted to remove that barb that held the cage together inexpensively, and make it so that the cages no longer stay in a circle. I can open them up as needed. So I think that that's going to be a big advantage as well. That, in combination with the two rebar pieces of rebar to support the row of tomato cages, is going to work out really well. The other thing is, if I ever reduce the number of tomato plants that we're growing, or didn't want to use all these tomato cages, you can use them in combination with each other. You just use a couple more cable ties or wire ties. So I use these reusable cable ties in order to hold the cages together, so that they're a complete circle encircling the tomato plant or whatever plant or tree that I'm holding together. The other advantage is I can stack them within each other. So before, since these take up 2 square foot of space when they're standing on end, or they take up 10 foot of square foot of space when they're laid on their side, because they're 5 foot by 2 foot, that really takes up a lot of square footage on your property or storage space. So what I decided to do, once I break these down each time, I put 3 inside of one, which means that each circle is 4. It's still relatively easy to lift and move around, and I can transport them in our dump trailer out to the woods where I store them during the winter time. I can get 4 times as many in each load, and they take up about 1/3 of the square footage, because they do expand a little bit beyond their 2 foot by 5 foot, their 2 square foot footprint on the ground. So they're still pretty easy. They're much easier to transport. They take up less space. There's less of a chance of the tomato plants or other plants getting entrapped in it. And if I'm going to put this around trees or other plants that are growing for over a year's period of time, I don't have to try and tear the cage apart or try to lift it way up over the top of the plant and rub it. I can actually unfold it, unwrap it from being the circumference around the perimeter of the tree, and take it out. So I hope this all made sense. If there's any comments or questions, please leave them below. These are the best cages that I've come up with. I saw this on a video, I think I mentioned in the first DIY video that I made making these tomato cages. It wasn't my original idea, but I've been tweaking it with the 2 rebar approach, and now removing these tabs and making them adjustable sizes for use in the food forest, protecting berry bushes and fruit and nut trees as well. I'll make a video showing how I'm modifying these, how I'm creating new cages for use in the food forest as well. So if you found this video of value, please give us a thumbs up, share it with your friends, hit that bell icon if you want to be notified when I post more videos. And folks, have a great day. Bye-bye now.